from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Our telephone number, if you want to join us tonight, Tuesday night, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And tonight I want to get into a bunch of things. We're going to talk about a student who failed a quiz because he said that only women can get pregnant. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We're also going to talk about the infamous son of Sam killer, David Berkowitz. And we're also going to get into a bunch of things that are going on Capitol Hill tonight. Is there new pieces of legislation that are coming out to make things better? And we definitely need to make things better on Capitol Hill, that's for sure. But I want to start off before we go into that stuff with just a couple of headlines. Of course, Vladimir Zelensky has visited Washington, D.C. to ask for more money. Jack Smith, the prosecutor that's coming after Trump, he's been collecting images, website visits, and usage data from Trump's cell phone. Ooh la la. And the Oversight Committee is now posting the biggest revelations they've found from the Biden investigation. Plus, there's an unprecedented attack on Rumble's servers. That's been confirmed by the CEO of Rumble. We'll talk about that a little bit as well, probably in hour number 3. But right now, I want to jump into this right here. And this right here is an interesting story that I saw that is quite remarkable. And it's the story that Chris Pavlovsky, right? He's the CEO of Rumble. And we'll talk about it more in open phones. But I just want to give you some of the headline here because this is an interesting story. He says there's an unprecedented attack on their servers and it's politically motivated. That's the Rumble CEO, Chris Pavlovsky, confirming yesterday that the platform had suffered an unprecedented attack, which he suspects is politically motivated because it was carried out, or at least they suggested that the attack was carried out by those looking to censor Rumble's content creators, adding that it could be related to the platform hosting uncensored videos such as the January 6th Capitol riot and others. So in a post on X on Monday, the lawyer and commentator Viva Frey said, I was planning to go live, but Rumble and locals are both down. Apparently, it's a massive, unprecedented attack, one that is likely politically motivated. If I have any updates, I will let everybody know. Godspeed, Rumble. Pavlovsky confirmed Frey's suspicions, noting that the attack against the platform had been going on since the weekend. I also suspect it's political, he added. Pavlovsky said that the attack might be coming from activists and or organizations who want to censor Rumble creators related to their January 6 videos being posted on Rumble. In response to the attacks, Tim Pool, he said, he's a host, a YouTuber, he wrote, war. Well put, Tim Pool. Meanwhile, Elijah Schaffer referred to the attack as absolutely unhinged behavior from enemies of free speech. And these conversations went on. Multiple conversations went on. Bottom line, it's interesting how they are, yesterday we learned about how the State Department was working with outside agencies, but through them, really, to censor speech. Now we're learning that Rumble was attacked before. Back in November, the platform suffered a major DDoS, I guess that's DDoS, attack after Pavlovsky vowed to join Elon Musk and go thermonuclear as well, following that Media Matters hit piece. The DDoS attack is a cybercrime where the attackers flood any server with internet traffic to prevent users from accessing connected devices onto that server. And obviously this makes the website unusable. So that's where they are right now, and they say that's what's going on. And it doesn't, it doesn't shock me, but it is disappointing. Not surprising, but disappointing that this is what they're going to do. Right? When was the last time you heard conservative arrested for shutting down leftist speech? It just doesn't happen, right? I always let people come on my show. They might accuse me of arguing with them, not agreeing with them, whatever you want me to say. Sure, that's true. I will argue with you, and I will challenge you, and I will ask follow-up questions. But I'll let you talk, and I'll let you have your time, and I'll let you make your point. And if you're not available, I'll play the audio of you saying it, right? I'll play the audio of anybody on the left saying any crazy thing we can, and we'll talk about it on this program, because I don't believe in censoring the left. I want you to hear what they have to say. I want to talk about it. I want to rebut it, refute it, discuss it, and then move on. It's an absolute shame that this whole thing is happening, and that they're treating Rumble this way, and it troubles me. Excuse me, I get tongue-tied, because I think to myself, this is the free marketplace of ideas, and what are we doing if not defending, advancing, and promoting our ideas? Right? In my opinion, may the best ideas win. This isn't about stifling one side versus the other. This is about getting to the bottom of it. Everybody does what they do. Somebody's got to be better than the next person. Somebody's got to win. Whatever happened to that? Why do we have to now force people to be, silent? I just don't think it's the right thing to do. Free speech should be free. Anyway, that's that story. Then there's an interesting piece in Time magazine on something called nudify apps. Yep, you heard that right. Nudify apps use AI to, quote unquote, undress women in photos. And these nudify types of apps, they're soaring in popularity. Get this. It's part of a trend that's worrying people. It's non-consensual deepfake porn that's developed by an app. These apps and websites that use artificial intelligence to undress women in photos are becoming super popular. Back in September alone, 24 million people visited undressing websites. The social network analysis company Graphica reported that number. Many of these are undressing, or what they call nudify services. And according to Graphica, for instance, the site they provide links, they have advertising, and they have these undressing apps. And they're experiencing more than a 2,400% increase on social media, including on Twitter and Reddit. Researchers said that services use AI to recreate an image so that the person is now nude. Many of the services only work on women, by the way. Isn't that something? So we'll figure that out. We'll talk more about that later as well. I also want to jump into what's going on Capitol Hill. So keep yourself comfortable. Keep it locked right here. Kick up your feet a little bit. Get ready. Turn up the radio. We're about to have an amazing show tonight with lots of interesting guests. Again, our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
My team is working with Senate Democrats and Republicans to try to find a bipartisan compromise, both in terms of changes in policy and provide the resources we need to secure the border. Compromise is how democracy works, and I'm ready and offered compromise already. Holding Ukraine funding hostage in the attempt to force through an extreme Republican partisan agenda on the border is not how it works.
Well, there we have it, folks. That's Joe El Baboso Biden, the president of the United States, with his remarks on funding for Ukraine and other things, and the border, and all the different disasters he's allowed to exacerbate during his tenure. And we're going to get to that in a moment. I also want to talk about some new legislation that's out there, and I want to do it with the chairman-elect of the Freedom Caucus, Representative Bob Good from Virginia. Last night won the election as chair of the Freedom Caucus, and he joins us today to talk about this new bill that he's got out. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that on the in the next segment. But right now, I want to get to the crux of this visit from Zelensky. Chairman Good, welcome, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you, Rich. Great to be with you. Appreciate you having me again.
You bet. You bet. So Biden's out there is making his rounds. He's saying everything that he's supposed to say. What say you?
Well, with respect to Ukraine specifically?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think right now the goal is to attach some funding for Ukraine to improvements at the border. I know that there's been a lot of discussion. Mitch McConnell's been holding his breath. I don't know that anything's happening. What do you think is going to happen in that regard?
Well, what the president and Chuck Schumer want to do on the Ukraine supplemental represents the worst of Washington. It's how we get to $34 trillion in national debt and a $200 billion with a B monthly deficit. The country's bankrupt. We're fiscally, unsustainable fiscally where we are. And Speaker Johnson, one of the best things that he has done so far was to do the standalone Israel package, where we separated out the $14 billion for Israel. We said it must be paid for. Israel's not fiscally insolvent the way that we are. Again, they don't have $34 trillion national debt and $200 billion monthly deficit. So even something as what I would consider as virtuous or as noble to support one of our true few allies in the world from this brutal Hamas attack, let's pay for it by reducing the $80 billion expansion of the IRS, Biden's pet project from a year ago with the Inflation Increase Act. And so it's a standalone pay for, which you never pay for supplementals, and we're separating it out. We're saying, hey, we're not going to be hijacked or held hostage for support for Israel in return for having $92 billion that has nothing to do with Israel. And so the Speaker and the House majority need to stand strong and say, we passed Israel support. We had a bipartisan bill because 12 Democrats joined all but I think one Republican to pass it. But the Senate won't take it up because they don't care sufficiently about Israel to do it and have it paid for by reducing the funding for the IRS. And again, they want to say you can't help Israel unless you also provide $61 billion for Ukraine, billions more for Hamas humanitarian assistance, for Taiwan assistance, for other disaster relief. And so that's what the White House and the Senate want to do, and that should be dead on arrival in the House. There's no reason for us to take it up because we have already passed the Israel supplemental. Now, that said, more specific to your point, what are we prepared to do as a Republican majority to secure the border when we have a president who's facilitated intentionally, purposefully a border invasion that's done irreparable harm to the country? You might argue never before in the history of the country has our own president done more to intentionally harm the United States than what this president's done with the border. And we have fussed about it. We've messaged about it. I've been to the border 5 times in my first 3 years in Congress because I do think it is the ultimate issue of the day along with our spending. But what are we prepared to do? You could argue we should not continue to fund this government that facilitates a border invasion. But at the very least, we ought to leverage that we're not going to do anything to secure Ukraine's border or to even consider securing Ukraine's border unless this administration, with the Senate, passed the H.R. 2 border security bill that came out of the House, a great border security bill that would codify into law the effect of Trump policies that were just presidential executive action or policies. They weren't laws in the sense of adding, we're not following our current laws, but they added, policies like remain in Mexico and ending catch and release and those sorts of things. But we got a good H.R. 2 bill. We should settle for nothing less from the Senate, except that H.R. 2, and then not even consider Ukraine funding until there are measurable metrics demonstrating we've reduced the border invasion down to the numbers that it was before this president got in office. Remember, it was Obama-Biden's Department of Homeland Security Director, Jay Johnson, who said if you ever got to 1,000 a month, or 1,000 a day, that would be an unsustainable, unmanageable crisis, and we've got 10 to 12,000 a day. Of the ones who surrender, that doesn't even count the gotaways, the ones who don't want all the free stuff because they are trafficking drugs and children and sex trafficking and the criminal backgrounds and the terrorist ties. And even with that, even with the border secure, then Ukraine should be a standalone bill that rises or falls on its own merits and should only be considered with a strategic plan, a definition of what success is, what's the limit of U.S. involvement, accountability, transparency. I'm still not going to vote for it, but that's the only circumstances under which this this speaker should bring that bill to the floor with a secure border, a standalone bill that accomplishes or has those provisions in it and is paid for, that we're not going to borrow from our kids and our grandkids to do it. All that's fantasy land. That's not going to happen. This president, this White House, this Senate are not going to secure the border. But at least we can stand up and keep the Israel bill as a standalone and refuse to take up Ukraine. We shouldn't even bring it to the floor for a vote.
Excellent stuff. As I'm listening to this, I'm hearing, this isn't going to happen, that's not going to happen, and I appreciate you being a straight shooter. So I'm thinking, do we actually impeach Mayorkas? Do we actually impeach Biden? Is that going to be a fight that we take on? It seems like the writing on the wall says yes, maybe, but there's a lot of people that seem to have cold feet.
Well, we sure were quick to get rid of one of our own, to kick out George Santos, to set a dangerous precedent for someone who'd never been convicted of a crime and who not allow due process to take place. But we don't want to hold anybody accountable in the Biden administration. Let's don't hold Merrick Garland or Chris Wray or Secretary Mayorkas or Joe Biden accountable, it seems to me. I've signed on impeachment articles last Congress and, for Mayorkas and for Biden. I think Biden should be impeached because of the Biden crime family activities. That's another subject if we want to get into it. But he certainly should be impeached because of the border invasion. And certainly Mayorkas should be impeached because of the border invasion. Again, what are we prepared to do? How do we allow this to happen on our watch? Gosh, we probably should talk about spending. We've touched on it. But right now, the Republican majority is running on $37 trillion in debt next year and an unsecured border on our watch.
Not good. Not good, Chairman. I want you to stick with us. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about spending and, of course, the proposal that you've put out there, which I think everybody needs to learn about, which is, let me just make sure I don't mess it up, the No Regulation Through Litigation Act. I want to make sure that everybody understands how that works. So we're going to discuss that straight ahead. If you have a question for the Congressman, feel free, 833-482-5337. 833-482-5337, or just call 833-4-VALDEZ. We're on with Chairman-elect of the Freedom Caucus, Congressman Bob Good from Virginia's 5th District. You can get him at good.house.gov. He's coming right back for another segment. We're going to continue our discussion with him straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The host of a Kremlin-run show literally said, and I quote, "Well done, Republicans. That's good for us," end of quote. Let me say that again. This host of a Kremlin-run show said, "Well done, Republicans. That's good for us." That's a Russian speaking. If you're being celebrated by Russian propagandists, it might be time to rethink what you're doing. History will judge harshly those who turn their back on freedom's cause.
So President Biden's there in a joint news conference with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that the Russians were praising congressional Republicans who are, not funding Ukraine and additional funding. And of course, this is Biden and his spin. It's always interesting, and they've never met a dollar they didn't want to spend. Our guest is the chairman-elect of the Freedom Caucus, Congressman Bob Good. Welcome back, sir.
Great to stay with you here, Rich. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. And as I mentioned before the break, I want to, just get some of your comments on spending here and your reaction to what you just heard President Biden say. And, of course, I want to learn more about the No Regulation Through Litigation Act. Go right ahead.
Well, spending is one of the greatest existential threats to our country. This president has created so many crises that in and of themselves, in normal times, you would say that might be the greatest threat. The weakening of the military, the war on American energy and the climate extremism, the redefinition of sex and gender, and the education system, the wokeness in our education system, what's going on our college campuses, so many things, the putting criminals ahead of law enforcement, undermining our police. But I think the border invasion and I think the crushing national debt and the reckless, unprecedented level of spending may be the two greatest existential threats. And the days of spending without consequence are over. As you know, we've got record some 40-year high inflation, which was non-existent when this president took office. We've got 20-year high interest rates, which, again, were extremely low, which is great for the economy, great for growth and development and just the American people when this president took office. And yet what do we have now? We've got record inflation. We've got grocery prices that, the average turkey dinner was, 40% higher than it was for Thanksgiving when this president took office. You've got gas and utility prices through the roof because of the president's war on reliable, affordable energy. Interest rates where people can't afford houses now. The average rent payment is over $2,000. Home prices have soared, almost double what they were when this president, in terms of the monthly payment with the interest and the increase in home prices since this president took office. Meanwhile, our credit's been downgraded twice now by two credit rating agencies. And there's a snowball effect now with an unprecedented $200 billion monthly deficit. So do the math. Every 5 months or so, another $1 trillion out of the national debt with no end in sight to the spending. At least we Republicans are struggling and fighting and battling on how to cut spending, how much to cut spending, if and when and whatever to cut spending. At least we're battling it. The Democrat Party has no interest. And what do you have? Again, the White House and the Senate trying to send us $106 billion supplemental, means not paid for, which means added to the budget, trying to get us to take it up. Speaker Johnson needs to hold his ground. We talked about the Israel supplemental in the previous segment, but and not bring to the floor. Tell him he's saying the right things right now because we separated out Israel so we can paid for it. And he said, hey, we're not going to deal with Ukraine's border until we at least secure our border and demonstrate it. That's the right thing to do. We are fiscally facing the greatest crisis we've had in our country. The only time we've had this level of debt to GDP was World War II, and we were trying to defeat, thankfully, successfully, by God's grace, Nazi Germany and imperialist Japan. What do we have to show for this record level of debt? And for that matter, if we were to face a true existential threat from a military standpoint, say a war with China, how would we fund such a war with the level of debt that we have going into the crisis?
Right, exactly. And this is what I'm thinking. Between spending and spreading ourselves a little bit too thin, we're screwed. Good insight there, Congressman. And I really want to get to this this bill you've got, because rarely do we see people putting stuff like that out there. And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to move this forward. But tell us a little bit about the No Regulation Through Litigation Act.
Yeah, I'm on the House Budget Committee, and I hope to make this part of our budget plan for next year. So it's doing two things. It's, on the one hand, it's trying to address spending and try to bring spending down, but also it is trying to just rein in a rogue, abusive regulatory agency, the bureaucratic departments and agencies that are not accountable to the voters. And what has happened, this took off during the Obama-Biden administration, and now it's went to a new level under the newer Biden administration, where the agencies, the departments of the federal government, when they want to enact new policy, they will coordinate with these outside NGOs, non-government organizations, these left-wing interest groups to sue them, to sue the administration, and then the administration will settle with the organization that has sued and create a new policy, a new regulation, a new mandate that burdens the American people. So I'll give you just a silly example. Let's say the federal government says, the agency says, you know what, we want to force all Americans to drive cars that won't go over 50 miles an hour. So let's have one of our friendly agencies sue because there was an accident where there was harm done with a car that went over 50 miles an hour, and then we'll just settle and the lawsuit by putting out a new mandate, a new regulation that you can't have cars that go over 50 miles an hour. That's what and that's an extreme example, but there's this previous president, President Trump, cut 7 to 8 regulations for every new one regulation. That saved the average family some $10,000 a year in hidden taxes and costs that you didn't see at the cash register, but they caused prices to go up. And there's that hidden costs that are passed through from the businesses onto the consumers. And this president has done just the opposite. And so what this would say is it would make it illegal, and that the federal government could not settle with an outside organization and create policy through that mechanism.
Unbelievable. Well, I'm glad that you're fighting the good fight on this one. And it's important because, again, whether it's litigation or these other types of hidden taxes that end up costing us money, I think we have to get to the bottom of it no matter what. Congressman, let everybody know how they could find out more about the work that you're doing, in particular as chair of the Freedom Caucus, the chair-elect, and anything else that you've been promoting this evening.
Well, thanks for having me again. It's great to be with you. But they can follow me on social media at Rep Bob Good. Follow me at good.house.gov and support me at bobgoodforcongress.com.
Outstanding. Well, sir, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Again, congratulations on winning the election as chairman-elect of the Freedom Caucus, and Godspeed with everything you're doing, sir. Merry Christmas.
Thank you for being in the fight. Merry Christmas to you, too. God bless.
Yes, sir. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. We'll continue our conversations with you all and other topics that we've got to nail down tonight, so don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
We must prove him wrong. The United States and Congress must, as I asked last week, it's stunning that we've gotten to this point. We need to fully appreciate how it's wrong, how this is being viewed around the world and being used by Russia.
And that's President Joe Biden with his best friend in the whole wide world, Volodymyr Zelensky. It's funny. I understand that they're at war, but how is it that this man has been to the White House several times already? I think he addressed a joint session of Congress, and he's never worn a tie. He's always wearing a sweatshirt and pants. He's not at war in the White House. I mean, even generals in the Army, they put on their Class A uniforms, right? I just don't understand. Other than, he's trying to build a brand for himself, like Governor Chris Christie did during Hurricane Sandy with that blue fleece that said Governor Christie on it. But to the governor's credit, the governor was going on, 20-hour days, breaking night. He was down at the shore, putting out one fire, putting out the next. And he was really doing that one day to the next. Guaranteed when he went and gave Obama that big hug, he wasn't wearing that. Right? You dress for the occasion. And that wasn't even in the White House. Here we have Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House. This guy's just wearing green cargo pants and his little black sweatshirt with the Ukrainian logo on it. Let me tell you, anyway, So today, Biden announces this $200 million military aid package for Ukraine to help with the war against Russia. $200 million. It's a fortune, a literal fortune. Now, the announcement, and listen, I want to support Ukraine, but not in an unending way. Like, there's got to be an off-ramp here. There's got to be a way to get this done where we're just not giving out money hand over fist. Anyway, Zelensky visited the White House today, and this is when they made their announcement, with Biden saying, I just signed another $200 million drawdown for the Department of Defense for Ukraine, and that'll be coming, Biden said to the reporters, from the Oval Office, with Zelensky clad in green army pants and a black sweatshirt. The roughly $200 million in weapons and equipment is going to be taken from Pentagon stockpiles that include additional ammunition for high mobility and artillery rocket systems, what they call HIMARS, HIMARS, high-speed anti-radiation missiles, anti-armor systems, artillery rounds, missiles, demolition munitions, 4 million rounds of small arms ammunition, generators and other equipment, as well as spare parts. That's what's in this package. The latest package, the U.S. now has about $4.4 billion remaining in weapons it can still provide from DOD stockpiles. So Zelensky's visit, he came with his hat in hand yet again. And again, I'm not trying to beat him up because he's here asking for help. I think anybody would in his situation. I think the reason I beat him up is he's not wearing a tie in the White House. And he makes it seem as if, he's above that. I think if any one of us were going to the White House, whether we like Biden or not, we're not going in a sweatshirt. Right? I mean, come on. Let's be real. Anyway, I know that there's probably bigger fish to fry than what this guy's wearing, but I just think it's uncouth. Zelensky and Speaker Johnson, as well as Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and other Republicans, other lawmakers, all met with Zelensky. And there's a photo of him here speaking with Mike Johnson. They both look very, very happy. And, of course, he's still wearing his green pants and his black sweatshirt. So the White House is giving away your money. I don't know how you feel about that. I know it's not something that I enjoy. I think we need to do better. And I don't know that we can, right? At least right now, I don't think that we're going to. Not that we can. I just don't think we will. I think Biden's got this thing planned out a certain way. He wants to give away as much money as he can without any real impact. And that's just unsustainable. It really is. Anyway, we continue with your calls and more straight ahead. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And I'm looking at some of the social media comments here. Martin Baumgarten, he says, love your show. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate you. It's nice to hear that. Especially, I was actually having my own critical moment. And $200 billion. Well, I was just reading from the Fox News report that is saying that the latest installment is $200 million. Overall, we're pacing towards $200 billion in total aid packages that we've given to them. But yeah, good catch. But I was specifically talking about what Biden approved today, which was another $200 million, if you could believe that. And I also want to get to your calls. Let's go to the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Paul, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Thank you for taking my call, Rich. Yeah, we're
Yes,
kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with this. You know, we had no alternative but to give some aid to the Israelis who are fighting 3 different countries, basically 4 countries all at once, and they needed the help right now. So I was happy to see that happen because they got their backs against the wall. You know, the Ukrainians had some leftovers. We gave them the Abrams tanks. We haven't heard any positive remarks, or I haven't heard any positive remarks about the Abrams tanks and what they've done to help the cause over there for the Ukrainians. You know, we're talking, $110 million a piece, and there was 12 of them or something that was sent. And, you know, what kind of accounting really have they done as far as the Ukrainians and how much money in armament that we sent over there and what's happened to it? I mean, there's no telling where it's gone. It's supposed to make it to the battlefield, but has it really made it to the battlefield? And that concerns me because they keep coming back with their hand out. Now, you know, not the last time, but 2 times ago, when it came time for Obama to do something when the Ukrainians had their back against the wall, he was kind enough to send them some blankets instead of some armament and some ways to fight the Russians. And so I'm wondering if we're waiting for Obama blanket number 2.0, because it seems to me that there's a lot of waste going on, and something that should have been taken care of has not been taken care of, and I think it's Feckless Joe's fault.
No, I think you're right,
King
Paul.
Joe the First.
I think you're right 100%. You know, years ago, somebody once told me, they said, you know, the reason our health care is so expensive is because other people pay for it. And I think that's the same thing we're seeing here. I think we would you send in some of these folks that are, you know, serious and looking to do things, and we can get a lot more done with a lot less money. And that would be a good thing for Ukraine, for the United States, for everybody. If, you know, we were to take a page from the playbook of we just even see around us. You know, there's nothing wrong with any government saying, okay, look, we checked our bank accounts and can't really help you the way you'd like to be helped. We can do this, but we can't do that. We can go as far as this much, but we're still going to need this and that, right? That's real life negotiating. Nobody ever said that we should just hand over money and ad infinitum, as they would say, right? It can be limited. It can be finite. We could say, look, we're going to help you for the next year. We're going to help you for the next year and a half. But, you know, if you're still at war a couple of years from now, we're going to work out a loan deal where we're lending you stuff or we're giving you stuff that's no good anymore for us that we're not going to use. But we can't just sit here and allow you to, you know, continually just come to us for help and with no expectation of anything in return. And it doesn't seem like advances are being made. It doesn't seem like anything is going on the way it's supposed to. So then what exactly are we paying for? That's my question. Paul in Boise, Idaho, thank you so much for the call, KBOI, and good insight. Folks, we continue with the rest of your calls and more. Straight ahead, don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the hour number 2 of the Tuesday night edition of our program. The phone number is 833-482-5337. If you want to join us, 833-4-VALDEZ. And again, Ukrainian President Volodymyr, he visited D.C. to ask for more money, and Biden said, "You got it, dude." $200 million was pledged to Zelensky just today. And Joe Biden's also running into a lot of trouble with his reelection campaign. There's a report out now that says he's looking to Hillary Clinton for his support with his 2024 campaign. We'll get to that at the top of the next hour. You've also got the Oversight Committee saying that they're going to be releasing not their greatest hits, their biggest revelations from the investigation into the Biden crime family. So stay tuned for that. And crime continues to wreak havoc across the country, right? I mean, you got it all over. There's crime in Washington, there's crime in Virginia, there's crime everywhere. And it seems like there's rising rates of crime, like a crime wave almost. And it's unfortunate. And murder's right there with it. You know, there are certain cities where they're experiencing increases in their murder rate, which is, of course, very, very, very lamentable, very, very, very unfortunate, but it is what it is. And that's actually happening. And it brings me to this book. I saw this book the other day. And, you know, thinking about crime and murder, it's a book called Monster Mirror. And it's written by Michael Caparelli. He's a Ph.D. And fascinating idea. Listen to this. 100 Hours with David Berkowitz, once known as Son of Sam, on mental health and evil phenomena. Now, here's a little bit of praise on this. Listen to this. It's easy to call bad people. It's easy to call people bad. It's not easy to ask why. I highly recommend this book. That's Dr. Daniel Amen, one of my favorite psychiatrists. He's a brilliant guy. And there's a foreword on the book from a former Colombo family mobster, Michael Franzese. And I just think it's very, you know, how often do you see a book where you've got Dr. Daniel Amen and somebody from the Colombo crime family, right? All in one shot saying, let's talk about this serial killer who's sitting down with this PhD, right? It's just the whole concept of it, I think, is very interesting. And this is why I want to talk about it, because we've all heard about the Son of Sam in movies and documentaries, et cetera. But he's going to introduce us to a new version of that, somebody that he got to know through these 100 hours. So I want to bring in our guest, Dr. Michael Caparelli. Sir, welcome.
Thank you for having me on. That's going to be the best opening to a show that I've ever done.
Well,
appreciate
there you go.
that.
My pleasure. Well, I really did find it interesting. I said, man, that's quite a cross-section of people that you've got, you know, and even the title, you know, Monster Mirror, and you're looking at them, and it's just the whole thing is a really well done, from my opinion. And I want you to take us through it. We've got some time, so I want you to kind of help us understand, why did you decide to write a book on Son of Sam?
Well, let me begin by saying I was a pastor for 16 years in Providence,
Wow.
Rhode Island.
Okay.
I dealt mainly with people in recovery from addictions, mental health issues, and yes, releasees from prison. In the process of being a pastor, I pursued higher education, PhD in behavioral science. I eventually resigned from pastoring, but I had this proclivity towards inmates. Probably goes back to when I was a kid. My dad was in prison, visited him as a young boy. In Italian-American families, when your dad is in prison, the euphemism is school. My mother used to tell me he was in law school.
Right. I had a friend who told me that too.
So,
my dad's away at school.
Yes. So I had this compassion towards prisoners, this higher education. in understanding human behavior, combined with being a clergyman. I mailed David Berkowitz in 2021 a copy of my prior book, a book about mental health from a Christian perspective. And David read the book. Very short time later, he wrote me back saying, I'd love to meet you if you're willing to visit. And I said, absolutely. I met him in early 2022, and we decided right there during that first session, which would be one of 34 sessions, that we would tell his story, and I would conduct what is known as a case study. And we delved into the mental health factors behind the 13 shootings, behind the 1,400 fires that he lit all through the Bronx. And I believe I took what is more of a humane perspective of David. Rather than looking at the monster, I decided to look at the man, because the facts are this. We're living in a day where there are 13 mass shootings a week in the United States of America. Those are alarming statistics. School shootings, mall shootings, and the family members are always saying things like, oh, we would have never thought it was him. He was the boy next door. So rather than taking the, typical demonized perspective of David, the mental health factors we discussed were pretty universal. I bracketed the DSMs. When I say the DSM, I'm talking about the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. I bracketed some of their descriptions of psychopaths, which is really known as antisocial personality disorder, and wanted to see David from a fresh lens. And we discussed things like isolation, shame, abandonment, resentment, things that I think the average reader is going to relate to. Because the facts are, every day, there are senseless violence in America, and it's often committed by the people we would least expect.
Folks, we are on with Dr. Michael Caparelli, who wrote the book Monster Mirror, 100 Hours with David Berkowitz, once known as Son of Sam. And when we come back, we're going to talk about your conversations around the topic of isolation, shame, resentment, and abandonment, because I think you're right. There's a lot of people that are in therapy, seeing a shrink on figuring these things out for themselves. The big difference is he went and killed people, and they didn't, right? So we're gonna find out how that dichotomy breaks out. So stick with us, Michael Caparelli, and folks, if you want to join the conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I was locked into a certain way of thinking. It's just impossible to explain, and I really hesitate to talk about it because sometimes it's just so taken out of context and misunderstood. But I was just into a type of thinking which I believe that later on in life, Christ had completely set me free from. And if it wasn't for my faith in Christ, if it wasn't for that other inmate reaching out to me one day and beginning to share his faith with me and bring me along that path, I probably would be just a miserable, lonely individual now, just caught up in my own world.
That is the voice of the Son of Sam killer, David Berkowitz, giving a testimony back in 1999 from prison to the network news. And we're discussing this gentleman and his interactions with the author of the book, Monster Mirror, Dr. Michael Caparelli. And before the break, Doc, you mentioned how you'd spoken with him and you talked about things about that many people go through, like isolation, shame, resentment, and abandonment. And these are things that can affect people in many different ways, right? Like a like an insecure attachment style, which could affect people's relationships. But it could also disorder their personality, right? And they can have personality disorders like the one he had, the antisocial personality disorder, and so on and so forth. Everything can come in varied degrees. But he says that he was healed by Christ and his conversion with his faith. And what was your experience in discussing these mental health issues with him?
Surprised at the level of candor and honesty in the year and a half of meeting with David. I think he's at a point in his life. He's 71 years old. He's had some major health scares. He had a triple bypass, some heart issues. I think he knows he's going to be meeting his maker, and he wanted to get the story straight. In fact, he made some shocking confessions. I'll leave it for the reader. I don't want to reveal that. But he was more candid and more honest than I ever expected. Now, I would say that David Berkowitz is a very different man than the persona in the 1970s that's locked into most of our brains. Why do I think he's different? Because I not only seen this man's actions, but I saw his reactions. People can put on a good act. You know, you've heard of jailhouse conversions, but when you spend 100 hours with somebody and I watched him react. I watched him get angry. He had a conflict with another inmate. I describe it in chapter 2 of my book, and I watch him regulate impulses, which is very atypical for your typical psychopath. Why do I believe David Berkowitz has changed? I think he did have a conversion, but I think he has found a sense of community in the prison. There are 15 to 17 guys that he meets with regularly. And the isolation that he was living in New York City from the 70s all the way to 1977 when he was arrested, I believe that isolation was one of the key ingredients in this recipe called violence. In fact, if you look at most of the school shooters, the common denominator between a lot of these mass shooters is they are pariahs. They're outsiders. They're feeling disconnected, trying to, get some attention. And that's not an excuse by no means, but it does bring some explanation. University of Japan has done fascinating studies on isolation. They take a group of rodents, they isolate a sample for about 15 days, and when they return the isolated rodents back to the community, at the point of reentry, the isolated rodents attack the community because in isolation, aggression goes up, adrenaline, cortisol, and empathy, oxytocin, it goes down. We become more aggressive. We become less empathetic. I think we've seen that as a nation during COVID. You looked in social media, there was so much contention. Of course, it was political and it was racial, but there was a lot of quarantining. There was a lot of isolating. And the more we pull away from each other, the more you can kind of see this aggression spike. And I believe that America is a very isolated nation. We may be extroverted, but we are not collectivists. We are very individualistic. Me is prioritized over we. And it's for that reason that we have the highest rate of mass shootings and school shootings in the world. I learned a lot in meeting with David Berkowitz. I saw what a man can become when he finds his tribe, so to speak.
And in your discussions with him, what did you glean from those discussions that was kind of outside of what you were expecting to get from him?
Well, I say isolation. Initially, I thought David was a loner, like, the Unabomber in a cabin somewhere with a shaggy beard. What I found was a New York City kid. Played on baseball teams, was a part of the Appalachian Mountain Club, a bus that went into the South Bronx, the Soundview section, picked him up and took him to the mountains and the Shorgunk area. And he was very much a part of groups and teams. He was in the military for 3 years. So my understanding of isolation expanded greatly because we began to talk about the difference between being with people and bonding with people. David was not a loner in the corner. David was a loner in the crowd. He was a part of the team, but never really of it. And we discussed some of those internal factors I think anybody that's ever felt alone amidst a group of people is going to read this book, read his story, and say, wow, this guy's a lot more relatable than I thought. You know, the media always paints a picture of the psychopath as other people. I got news for you, Rich. There are no other people. We like to think other kids will shoot up schools, not my kids. Other people will commit homicide, never me. There but for the grace of God go I. There are no other people. Anybody is capable of anything, providing the right set of circumstances and the wrong succession of choices. David Berkowitz evolved from a baby into a serial killer, and that evolution is a lot more familiar than we would care to admit.
That's really interesting, right? I mean, because it's not just your typical jailhouse conversion, but it's your analysis on it. You know, from a psychotherapeutic type of perspective, where it's kind of like, wow, that it makes sense, and I find it remarkable, honestly. Folks, again, the book Monster Mirror by Michael Caparelli, Ph.D., 100 Hours with David Berkowitz, once known as Son of Sam, on mental health and evil phenomena. And ultimately, where do you land with this? Do you think that he's obviously repentant and somewhat healed? You mentioned earlier about his ability to empathize and react to certain emotions that people that are psychopaths typically don't have the ability to do. Is there a model for, I guess, treatment for people suffering from psychopathy?
I think David has a lot to say to those that do suffer from psychopathy. I call it Monster Mirror because you're going to look into David and you're going to see not just a monster, but you're going to see a reflection that's very familiar. His story is a story of hope. Do I think he should be released? I'm not saying that. He's going to go up before parole, and 6 months from now, it goes every 2 years. He's not even looking to get out himself. But do I think he's doing a good job at living a productive life over the last couple of decades? I do. Let me just encourage you. You can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It ranked #1 on Amazon in the serial killer category for the first 3 days of its release in October. It's been selling thousands since it came out October 10th. I believe it's not just a dark story, but as Michael Frances calls it, it's a glorious story. It's a story of hope for those that might be psychologically oppressed.
Michael Caparelli, let everybody know the website, the social media account. How do they follow you and learn more about what you're doing?
Rich, I thank you so much for this opportunity. You can go on Facebook, find me, Mike Caparelli. My website's unmuted.app, or you can go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Outstanding. Well, sir, Godspeed to you. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for the conversation, and good luck with the book, Michael Caparelli.
Merry Christmas.
You too. Merry Christmas, brother. All right, folks, we're coming back with more discussion, your calls, and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And a student, 10th grade student, or I should say a 10th grade teacher, ethnic studies teacher, world history teacher at Chief Self International High School in Seattle, gave students a quiz titled Understanding Gender versus Sex. The quiz provided a series of statements to label true or false, or questions with multiple choice, and many of the questions focused on personal pronoun use. Some examples of questions or the true or false statements included: when someone uses they, them pronouns, what does that mean about their gender identity? Question mark. True or false? Transgender people are gay. 2 questions, however, are objectively false. but students are taught the exact opposite, right? One of them, which is all men have penises. Then, the student circled true, and the teacher penalized them for answering the question wrong, claiming that women can also have a penis. Unbelievable. So that's where we are with that. I want to get some reaction to this stuff, because this is, in my opinion, it's pretty crazy stuff. I want to bring in Craig Huey. He's author of The Christian Voter. And this is just really interesting to me. Craig Huey, welcome to the program.
Rich, it's great to be with you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time tonight. And as I read through this, I'm just kind of, I don't want to say shocked, but man, very, very disappointed. And honestly, a little bit surprised. I didn't think things were that crazy. I mean, I knew they were, but I just, it's still somewhat surprising to me. Tell us what's going on here. How did this whole thing unfold?
Well, this is up in Seattle, but, it's not isolated to Seattle. But what happened in the high school is you had a teacher, and because they failed the student who was telling the truth, one of the questions,
Right.
it was only women can get pregnant. And he said yes. So they failed this student, and so the mom complained. And the mom considers herself a liberal, but she's saying, "Wait a minute, this is not truth. This is not reality." And the school system refused to listen. And it's a sad reflection of today's government-run, tax-supported school systems. That's the problem. Rich, basically we have a situation in the school systems, and they deny reality. In this case, totally denying reality. It's against science. It's an indoctrination of ideology. And that's the problem. So much of what's being taught in the schools is ideology. And on the surface, you may think, well, it's a problem with a bad teacher in Seattle. Well, just get rid of the teacher. But sadly, today's education system is more than a broken system of just a few bad teachers. It's really throughout the system. It's ideologically driven teachers, curriculum, and administrators. And, listeners might think, well, I remember when I was in school, it can't be much different than then, but it is. and that's the problem. Rich, you've got listeners throughout the United States. Some are in small towns. This is going on there. Some are in big cities. This is going on there. East Coast, West Coast, South, North. It is happening all around. And it is really something that it's going to take some really intense changes into the system itself, because this type of thing, we see it reflected with so many kids in high school that are living in fear of different things that are taught in school, which are also denying reality, going out and marching or becoming political, actually be turning into a politicized school system. And that's what's happening today.
Unbelievable. Folks, we're on with Craig Huey, and I think he's hitting the nail on the head with respect to this story of wokeness coming out of Seattle, where a student was asked on a quiz if women could get pregnant, and he was marked wrong. I mean, if men could get pregnant, he was marked wrong when he said, they couldn't, and it's only men that have penises. He was chastised for that and corrected, saying, no, women can also have a penis. Just crazy. The whole thing is just so beyond the pale. Folks, stick with us. We're coming right back with Craig Huey, author of The Christian Voter, The Deep State, the new multi-channel integrated marketing, and 23 equity crowdfunding secrets to raising capital. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Men do not menstruate. Only women menstruate. Now, you can call yourself whatever you want.
Cis men don't menstruate, but trans men do menstruate.
No,
Same
they
as
don't.
non-binary people.
Only women.
Menstruating is not exclusive to cis women. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
So explain to me as to why my body menstruated at some
If your
point
chromosomes
then.
are XX and you're young, you menstruate. If you're XY, you don't.
Correct, but what about trans men and non-binary?
They're
We're
not
excluding
men.
a whole group of
They're
people
women
that
dressed
menstruate.
as men.
Well, what's a man to you? You define a man for me.
You have chromosomes that are X and Y. That's what a man is.
So why are we just looking at the science of this as an
The
example
science.
when we've learned sex and gender identity are they're completely different things.
They're not completely
They
different
are
things.
completely different.
Completely different words.
Sex is what you're born with, the sexual reproductive organs you have. Gender is what you identify with. They're completely
Well, I don't
different
accept that
things.
distinction. You have to argue for it. You're just giving a conclusion. You're just making it up.
Making it up. That's exactly what it sounds like a lot of the time. And folks, you may have remembered that clip. We played it a while back, and I felt it very, very appropriate to play again now as we're looking at similar stuff, whether it's students failing tests saying, no, of course not, men don't get pregnant, or here where they're saying that men are menstruating. It still remains a very fluid conversation, if you will, and I want to continue that conversation that we're having with Craig Huey. He's the author of The Christian Voter, and you can check him out at craighuey.com. Craig Huey, when you hear stuff like you just heard, and you review and reflect on the stuff that we just talked about, where does that put America in your estimation?
We're in trouble. We've got to turn this around because we're basically from kindergarten all the way into college. The schools have been transformed into indoctrination mills. They've been transformed into trying to change perception. When you're going through a teaching college, my career has been in business, but I started off getting a secondary education credential, doing student teaching and taking a look at a high school. When I went to the teacher school, two things I remember distinctly. One is they were talking about how you had to change the perceptions of the students. And basically, in the teaching colleges today, they're indoctrinating the new teachers in ideology and how to spread that ideology, whether it be in math or science or history. And then two, I was told, don't tell the parents. Hide it from the parents. Don't let the parents know what you're teaching. And I was absolutely horrified. I was teaching economics and world history, and it was the contrary to everything I knew to be truth. And part of this has to do with many of your listeners have heard of critical race theory. And this is part of what's gone on in the teaching colleges where that's integrated. You go through college, you learn critical race theory dogma, and what it is a quasi-Marxist way of seeing all people, all human history and every human interaction as a power struggle. And it places every human being into really two categories, the oppressor or the oppressed. And that's what these students are being taught. Second, it talks about basically deconstructing old truths and creating new truths. And so it's a denial of reality, and it's even in the sciences. It's not just in history. And what about the kids? How are they faring? Well, throughout the United States, the public government-run school systems have been a failure. Now, the one where this is going on that got all the attention was in Seattle, and they spend $20,000 per student. Only about 58% actually show up on a regular basis at school. And just in the math standards, only 16.1% of these high school kids meet the standards. And it's a failure throughout. Why? Because they're more interested in basically talking about the political and cultural issues that are important to these teachers. And this is now starting to come out. More and more people are reporting on it. It's not just Seattle. It's in Wichita. It's in Dallas. It's in small towns in Tennessee. It's small towns in Virginia. It's happening all over the United States. And that's why we do have a problem. I applaud the fact that even in this last election a couple of months ago, conservatives mostly were wiped out who were running for office, except for school board. There were multiple school board victories where parents rose up and said, enough is enough. We're going to change this. But the problem is you can't change the teachers. You can't change the administrators. You can't change even the doctrines that are guiding the principals of these schools in the state of Washington. This is part of their state curriculum. They're not, the school system doesn't back down because this is part of what they're supposed to teach and supposed to help kids, progress into this ideologue. And so, to me, this may come as a shock to many people. I think we need to vote for good school board candidates, good superintendent of public education when those are on the ballot. But the real hope to turn America around, turn the education system around, is to be able to do what's just this massive trend of school choice. Let the parent get that $20,000 and decide where they're going to send their child, whether that be the homeschooling, a private school, a Christian school, or a public school that they want to send them to, but is actually teaching the kids and doesn't go along with this dogma of indoctrinating the kids. And so I think what we're seeing across America is an understanding that we've got to change the way we do education because it's broken and it's not going to heal itself, and you can't change it from the outside. It's gone too far. And I think more and more people are realizing that's the case.
I think you're right, Craig Huey. And I want to continue that discussion, tug on that thread a little bit. And I want to learn more about your latest book. And you can tell everybody about it and where to get it straight ahead. Folks, if you want to join the conversation, Open Phone America is coming up at the top of the next hour. You can start getting your calls in now. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we're on with Craig Huey, the author of The Christian Voter and The Deep State. And, Craig, I want you to listen to a quick clip of audio from a woman named Stacy Robustelli. She's director of education at an organization called High Tops. I've played this audio numerous times on this program because I can't believe it exists. I can't believe there's an organization that's solely a nonprofit that exists to promote gender ideology and queer theory in public schools. And you're going to hear this woman say that we're doing it in grades 5 through 8, but we really need to do it in grades K through 3. Check this out.
The most critical time to be there is grades 5 through 8 because you want to catch kids when they're starting puberty, because that's the time in which identity formation is central to their lives. However, early intervention is key. So we actually are designing a kindergarten through grade 2 curriculum this summer. And I will tell you, one of the most rewarding experiences, Nikki, we were in a local school system in an elementary school, and we were in grades 3, 4, and 5. And after we were there, 5 students went to the principal's office and came out. So we are really intentionally going into younger and younger grades.
So here you have this woman celebrating the fact that they're preying on our children, and also celebrating the idea that kids are coming out in the principal's office and whatnot, as if, they're achieving their goal of proselytizing what they believe in. Craig Huey, in the next 2 minutes that we have together, give me your reaction to that, and of course, make sure you let everybody know where they can get a copy of the book.
Well, here's the thing, Rich. This is not unusual. This is what's going on nationwide. And the idea of teaching kids kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, to question their sexual identity. Do you feel like a boy today? Have you ever thought you might be really a girl? That might be a good thing to be able to really think about these type of things. That type of teaching to impressionable kids is so damaging, so psychologically harmful. Creating a complete questioning of who they are, and then giving them guidance that you can change. You want to be a boy and you're a girl, but you want to really be a boy. It can happen, And this is so wrong, and yet parents are putting their kids in schools where the kids are learning this. Then the kids come out, and the parent goes, what's happening? Why is my kid thinking like this? And we're seeing more and more parents and more grandparents saying, what's happening to my kids in school? What's taking place? That's why we got to see this change, massive change in school choice. And so, in my books, I talk about how we can accomplish school choice, what it is, and why it's so essential. And I try to expose this type of damaging indoctrination of the kids.
And Craig, let everybody know where they can get a copy of the book.
Go to craighuey.com, and you can get the Christian Voter book, and you can also get it on Amazon. Outstanding.
Craig Huey, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you, sir. Folks, check him out at craighuey.com. Have a Merry Christmas. Hope to talk to you again in the new year. And folks, we're going to get to the rest of your calls and comments and more with Open Phone America. That's coming up now, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. This is the hour we like to call Open Phone America. That's where the open phones are open. You can give us a call, discuss any topic you'd like. You can react to the topics we've discussed already, like our interview earlier with the new chairman of the Freedom Caucus in the United States House of Representatives, Bob Good, and everything that he brought to the table. We also had some discussion around David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, and that type of jailhouse conversion. And that was really, I think, just fascinating information, as well as talking about how wokeness is just continuing to run amok in institutions in our country where, men and women are a thing of the past, right? That's kind of crazy. Anyway, there's so much going on tonight. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have reported that they have recovered the remains of 2 more hostages that were abducted on the 7th of October. There are some analysis from CNN that says that Russia has lost 315,000 troops since they started their war with Ukraine. And let's see, there's a high school in Florida that was fined the amount of $16,000 and put on probation over having a transgender player on a girls' volleyball team. That's against the law in Florida. We talked about that last week. So there's a little follow-up on that there. And a Russian man arrived at Los Angeles International Airport on a flight from Copenhagen, Denmark. And this guy had no passport and no ticket. How'd he get there? I don't know. That's pretty odd. I can barely get on a plane with a boarding pass, right? I'm always afraid they're going to bump me. It's just crazy the way that story panned out. And a lot more out there. There's a Michigan teenager that's being charged with causing the suicide death of a teen in through cyberbullying, through a online game they were playing. You've got a chef out of Canada that's been accused of selling suicide kits. That's crazy. And we're going to get into all that stuff and more straight ahead. I want to go to Ralph. He's in Port St. Lucie, Florida, listening on WPSL. Ralph in Port St. Lucie. Go right ahead.
Yes, good evening, Rich. I very much enjoy your informative and entertaining show.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to comment. Oh, you're welcome. I totally agree with your last guest, bringing to light how this woke mentality is ruining our education system. Now, my thoughts on this is I do not see the problem as an education problem or an intelligence problem, but it's actually a spiritual problem, Rick. As a Sunday school teacher, this just happened last week, I was actually challenged by a class member who said to me, there is no such thing as a stupid question. Well, my response was, I respectfully do not agree. An example is, can a man have a baby? Now, that's a stupid question. This woke mentality did not begin last year or a couple of years ago. I see it that it began when anything biblical or spiritual was banned or taken out of our schools. You remember when that happened? You weren't allowed to have 10 commandments and that type of thing.
And prayer. Took prayer out of the classroom.
Prayer in schools, exactly, Rich. In conclusion, the beautiful thing about the Bible that I have studied for 45 years since I became a Christian is that all of this stuff was prophesied a long time ago. If you would look into Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20, it reads, "Woe unto them that will call evil for good and good for evil." But your guest was right on. It's destroying our education system, and it's really hurting our country.
It's a great point that you bring up, Ralph, from Port St. Lucie. I agree with you. I think, some have made the argument that God created good and God created evil. And my understanding is that God is good and evil is the absence of that God. And when you don't have the goodness of God, you get the evil of the flesh, the evil that men bring to the table, one's own self, your own desires. And this is a hotly debated topic, right? and people, whether the genesis, the original, the origin or the root of people's bad behavior, put it to the side. Ultimately, it's incumbent upon all of us to just do the right thing, especially if we have the next generation that's watching, or right there behind us, looking for what they're going to do and how they're going to respond as they're in their 40s and 50s and 60s and whatnot. So I think you're right. We have to fix the problem that we have with schools. We need parents to be as bold as possible and stand up for their children in a way that only a parent can. And if we don't, then the government is going to raise our children for us. And I don't know about you, but I know I'm not in the business of sharing the ability to parent with anybody but the mother of my children, right? I'm definitely not going to share it with the government. So great point, Ralph. I really appreciate the call. Big shout out to everybody in Port St. Lucie, Florida, WPSL. And we do continue this conversation, and we do it right after this. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So get this. This is an interesting story here. There's some new details coming out about a pastor that was recently killed. I think we talked about this a few nights ago, but a Florida man has now been charged with brutally gunning down the pastor and his new wife a week after their wedding had just been finalized. And he had finalized his divorce with the female victim in just the last month. Now, Curland Williams and his wife, she's a nurse, Marceline Racine, were installing surveillance cameras in front of their home in West Palm Beach, Florida, when Sonny Joseph arrived and allegedly shot them both dead. Now, the new bride previously had divorced Josephat, on November 22nd, according to WPTV, and described by the relatives, this guy, Josephat, was controlling and saying that he told police when asked that she had been disrespecting him and ignoring his phone calls. Sounds like a psycho. So anyway, that's what happens. These people get married. They're happily thinking it's happily ever after. And then comes her ex-husband and he starts killing people. Man, talk about, a bad break. That's absolutely horrible. Anyway, I want to get to your calls. Let's open up the phone lines. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Pat, Sedona, Arizona. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. Thank you.
I love listening to your show. That Huey Franks, he made a lot of sense of what's been going on.
Craig Huey.
Craig Huey. It's the transgender thing and the immigration, illegal immigration thing are just two things that bother me the most about what's going on right now in this country. I mean, the economy and all that stuff, a lot of people pay attention to that, which is important, but these are two very sociable things because both of these things have a lot to do with our future. And I'm always thinking of the future. I'm thinking about these young people. And this poor kid, he was right. His answer was right. And the X's, O's, and the Y's, that the gentleman was talking about, you played upsert of an interview, well, I guess with somebody who didn't agree and somebody who, said about, transgender, that men can have babies and men can menstruate and about, the parts of genitalia of men and women. And it figures that they're going to go after the kids when they're the most vulnerable, when they are kindergarten through third grade, when they're just finding out who they are, and it's medieval. And I guess a lot of us sit out here and go, what can we do? We go to school councils. They'll do the same thing they did to that mother. They'll just ignore you. They'll have you arrested. They'll harass you. And what I think it is getting out there and talking about it. And that man and you, mostly on this national broadcast show, great show, thousands of people are probably listening to you from end to end. And it's great. You bring these things up because people need to know what our schools are doing. And with this COVID thing and shutting down the schools, it was a process. It's a process of destroying our youth. And they're coming up, and they're going to have to take over these people that went through COVID are going to have to be able to run this country 30 years from now. Are they going to be able to? Are they going to be so scarred? And with this transgender thing and what it's going to do to our youth now is it's going to be totally. I don't know. I know. Rich. I'm almost without words, but it goes back to the thing that about gays and how the gays have come up. And I'll tell you this, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I find that gay people are more acceptable today than they ever been. They worked hard. They went through some hard times. They went through a lot of discrimination. They used to get beat up. These people used to do this insane thing just to beat up somebody because they were gay. And they weren't doing anything to them, but they didn't like them because they were there. How about you being a Republican or a Democrat? Oh, you're a Republican. I'm going to go beat you up. It's insanity how people think. And those people who thought that way back in those days, well, you don't hear from them anymore because they've changed or they're gone. And the gay people have made their way. There's still some room. There's a lot of maturity in this country we need. But this transgender thing, I think they are preying on our children when they should be left alone and learn it like we did.
Yeah, I think you make a brilliant point. And thank you for your kind words about the program and everything you said, all the compliments. I appreciate it. I think you're spot on. I think it's important that we protect our kids so that they can be kids and they don't have to worry about all of the hyper-sexualized content that they're consuming everywhere online and through movies and film and media. And if the one place they have is a crib, or some legitimate safe space, like a classroom or something like that, we need to protect those things, right? We have to make sure that our kids have that opportunity to grow in the classroom. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Pat, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Folks, again, the phone number 866-505-4626, our legacy line, or just give me a call at 833-4-VALDEZ. And before we pause, I want to go to Sandra. She's in Dothan, Alabama, WDBT. Go right ahead.
Yes, good evening. I wanted you to maybe comment on this. This is something that Senator J.D. Vance said on Sunday. And what he says is this: what's in America's best interest is to accept Ukraine is going to have to cede some territory to the Russians, and we need to bring the war to a close. If you could comment about that.
Sure. What's your thought on that? Do you support the idea that the Ukrainians should just give away their land?
Well, really, I'm for this. I think this needs to end.
Yeah.
I don't know that Putin wants the whole of Ukraine, but I don't think this country can keep on giving all this money for this.
Here's my thinking. I realize everybody wants the war to come to an end, and I do too. But it's not necessarily my say, right? The reason they have a war is because the Russians were posturing, hanging out on the front lines, on the border with Ukraine, and they stood there for a while in a show of strength, and then they moved in. And as they moved in, they've hurt a lot of people, right? And they've killed a lot of people. This is not something that I think we can allow to say, oh, we forgive you, Vlad. We're very sorry. Hey, Volodymyr here. Sorry, Vlad. You messed us all up, but we'll be all right. No, I think there's got to be more. There's got to be more. We have to have certain boundaries, but it's not our place to make. I think the only thing that is our place is to support, to offer aid, to help them. And again, not to the tune of $200 billion either. But moderation is what I think is the answer here. And I know that the end game for Ukraine is, look, you have come and you've attacked us. What's Russia's end game? We want this, we want that. We wanted Crimea, we took it. We want this, we're taking it. When you have that kind of attitude towards your country and people that are willing to steal pieces of your country, I think this is very problematic, and it's not something I want to be a part of, that's for sure. So while I get the Ukraine fatigue that everybody has, I don't think it goes anywhere unless we, the people, figure out a way to hold our politicians accountable so that they can do what they've got to do in supporting the folks in Ukraine and bringing an end to this in the best way that we possibly can, if that made any sense at all. Sandra in Dothan, Alabama, WDBT, thank you for the call. And folks, we continue with your calls and more straight ahead. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your phones, open phone across America. Always one of my favorite things to do here on the program. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Ventura, California, KVTA. Let's check in with Patrick. Patrick, what's up, man? You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. I'd love to talk to you again. I called in once before. Kudos
Welcome back.
to Jim and you with where you've advanced the program. Love it. I want to just discuss with Ralph called earlier, and I do not disagree with his conclusion nor yours. However, I don't believe there are any dumb questions.
Yeah, well, I think what he said was, he said that it was stupid questions. And, when I was a kid, they always said, look, there are no stupid questions, just stupid people that ask them. But maybe I wasn't taught the right way. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, again, I get that, and probably we went to the same parochial school. But the stupid question thing I just don't agree with. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. I've done a lot of training, and other educational things. So, especially if there's a youngster asking a question, it can't be regarded as stupid. It just can't. I get it that, he's got a epiphany and he gets it, and that's fine. And even an adult, maybe they haven't had the epiphany or the raising of consciousness to where that question is, but it's still not stupid. It needs to be asked, and we need to embrace it. If we don't embrace it, break it down and explain it, then how's the other person going to feel? They're going to rebel against whoever answered the question, and that's going to make the question more confirmed in their mind.
Listen, I think you're 100% right here. And this is, and all jokes aside, right? My comment before was, just me being slick. I agree with you. And this is coming from somebody that, as a kid, even as a young adult, there were times I'd have a question or even an answer. And for lack of wanting to engage, lack of maybe it's not the right time, lack of maybe I don't know this topic as well as I thought I knew it, so let me hold back. I realized you're right. You've got to put your stuff out there. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And everybody should be encouraged to ask a question. Some people like to ask questions for the sake of hearing their own voice and sounding like they're, having a high level of command of the topic and using the question as kind of like a springboard to, showcase their own ability and pontificate. But ultimately, I think you're right. People should remain open to being inquisitive, to asking more questions. That level of inquiry is what we need. The last thing we need is for, groupthink or for people just to take everything at face value and not think critically at all. I think that's a no-no. So I think you're right on track there, and everybody, especially children, should be asking questions. I think our parents that are kind of old school and those who've gone before us saying, no stupid questions, just stupid people that ask them. I think that's a joke, and I've always taken it as a joke. I don't think that's a real way to run anything. And I think you're spot on with it. So thank you for your call, brother. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Now, earlier, we played a little clip of audio of a gentleman, I think it was on Dr. Phil, and he was debating with some pro-trans activists, and was a pro-family guy. And we have a little clip that we played earlier. I just want you to hear a tad of it. Go right ahead.
Men do not menstruate. Only women menstruate. Now, you can call yourself whatever you want.
Cis men don't menstruate, but trans men do menstruate.
No,
Same
they
as
don't.
non-binary people.
Only women.
Menstruating is not exclusive to cis women.
And there you go. So there's this debate. Trans men, cis men, what kind of men is it that menstruate? I don't know. What say you? 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Let's go to Reading, Pennsylvania, WEEU, and check in with Katie. Katie, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, Richard. You put me on right in the middle of my hands being all soapy. Anyways, regarding the men having their
Well, thank you for washing your hands.
You're welcome. I beg to differ because I have been informed otherwise by my own husband. And he's like, men always get their periods, Katie. Why do you think I take the dog out 3 times sometimes at night? And I'm like, what? He's like, there are nights that I walk the dog 3 times. Is there not? I said, yes. He's like, I have my period then. So men get their periods.
Now, is this in the sense of like mood swings? Is that what he's talking about? Like PMS?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he meant.
Yeah,
right.
I would agree with that. I do think I don't think it's unique to women to have mood swings, and I'll just leave it just at the mood swings. I think that's what most people kind of paint the picture as. I don't ever want to minimize what women go through because I know that I once spoke with a doctor. I worked in a school, and he was the medical director, and he was explaining that the symptoms that some women go through are so severe. And he was listing what medications and how he treats these women for 7 or 10 days while they're suffering from PMDD, PMS, post-menstrual, whatever there is. Just, it was a lot. And I don't want to ever say that because some guys have mood swings that it's similar. But I will say, yeah, I do think that guys do have, you can also get stuck in this, right? I think many times we confuse it as personality, the fact that we might be short-tempered or have a short fuse, but it's not necessarily that, I don't think. I think it's personality plays a part. I also think that, the way we handle things, the way we handle stress, the way we choose to look at our outlook, what kind of self-talk we have, how we internalize problems, issues, opportunities, all that, everything makes a difference. And you're right. I think there's lots of men, myself included, that can be very easily frustrated by things. But at the same time, I think that it's more than that, obviously, that women go through than we go through. But I agree. Definitely people lose it. And I'm one of those. Every now and again, I get moody and I lose it too, Katie.
Right, and you don't even understand why, right? And it just happens.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of the reason why is there's a lot of things, right? As men age, post 40 even, there are changes in hormone levels that can cause those types of mood swings for all different reasons, right? Not just like anger. You might feel it a little more intensely and be like, oh my gosh, that hurt my feelings. Let me tell you why, right? All sorts of different things happen. You're right. You don't know how to identify those things. But I think it, kind of goes hand in hand with the midlife crisis that a lot of guys go through. And, I guess I'm going to say the scenarios can be endless at this point. And ultimately, I agree. Men can be moody for lots of different things. And I also think that something I'm learning as a young man getting more mature, very slowly, is that we don't have to be guided by our emotions per se. If I get really angry and my blood is boiling, that doesn't really mean I should act on that. And it reminds me of a Bible verse, be angry, but sin not. And this is just a lesson, again, that I'm learning right now in life as we speak. Whereas normally in real life, if I got angry, I acted angry. I'm learning now, you can get angry and you can let it go. Don't even get angry. Just, focus on something that's positive for you and go for the win. Because entertaining negativity is oftentimes just a waste. It doesn't help you or anybody else involved in that situation. So anyway, that's my Dr. Phil moment for what it's worth. Katie in Reading, Pennsylvania, WEEU. Thanks for your call. We're going to continue with the rest of your calls from Kansas, Indiana, Maine, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're discussing the craziest topic ever about men menstruating, men saying that they can menstruate. Actually, it wasn't even men saying it. It was women saying that trans men can, in fact, menstruate. And it was just an interesting topic overall, I think, to get into. Just one of those crazy things that wow. Anyway, I want to get to your calls on that. Zion, Auburn, Maine, WLOB, go right ahead. Welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I just want to know how crazy it is that we're actually talking about men menstruating, a thing that, has never been thought about for thousands of years on talk radio. Even just 5 years ago, we would have never thought that this is happening. That's how you can tell that this is fake and this does not, really happen in the real world. And I think that giving it attention is just making the fire get bigger, if you will,
Well, that is my job. I am here to pour gasoline on every fire I could find to cause the biggest inferno ever. That's kind of what talk radio exists to do, right? Think about people listening to talk radio, whatever the topic is, and going, I feel so much calmer now after listening to a couple hours of talk radio. Of course not, right? You listen to talk radio, you leave incensed, your sensibilities are inflamed. You're thinking, oh my God, I can't believe that they're doing this and they're doing that. Whether it's you hate the host, you love the host, or you love the host, you hate the topics, whatever the case is. I agree with you. It's completely manufactured. It's ridiculous on its face that we would give so much attention, and maybe not so much we, but even those that cater to the left, public schools and the like that are, doing this. The fact that they've passed laws in Florida preventing girls from joining or preventing transgender students from joining any girls' sports. Just crazy, right? It's amazing that we needed to pass a law in order to defend little girls that want to play a sport. Blows me away. And that even after you pass a law to do such a thing, that there's people out there saying, oh my God, we're going to overturn that. We're going to get it repealed. And, I can't help but think like you're thinking to myself, like, wow, how'd we get here? What the heck is going on? Are these people out of their minds that, we're literally having a debate on this stuff? But we are. And I think that's why it's important to do it, because somebody listening somewhere might say, no way, you're full of it. They're not doing that. And here we are a month or two from now, they might actually encounter that situation. And hopefully they're a little bit more prepared to do the right thing if they're in such a situation, because that's a crazy situation to be in. At least that's my opinion, Zion.
Yeah, I understand. It's your job to, spread the flames. But I just think if there was no attention on it, that it would stay the 0.25% it's been, according to them, which I don't even think it is, but it would just be a non-issue. And I understand it's your job to, bring attention to it.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think I bring attention to it as much as it's brought up in dialogue and discourse. Somebody on TV saying, I wasn't saying it, right? I was playing the audio of them talking about that on television. And you had somebody that was, taking one side of the issue and somebody that was taking the other side of the issue. And I think it was Dr. Phil that whole exchange occurred on. And when something like that happens in the goings on of our nation, we'll comment on it and give some analysis and insight on it, because why not? But yeah, ultimately, I think it's important for us to have those discussions. And there's a lot of things, like people say, oh, don't ever say the name of these mass shooters. Don't do this, don't do that. And then they'll stop. I don't know if I believe that. I just don't know. I'm pretty sure that they are looking for that, because they've admitted it in their manifestos and whatnot, that, when I'm done here, everybody's going to know my name. Sure, I understand. But I don't know that. I just don't. I don't believe it. That if we were to, let's just say, I don't know, a universally accepted practice became that every time there's a mass shooter, we don't say anything about them. That we just call them mass shooter X from, Podunk, whatever state. And that I don't know that if we did that collectively and everybody adhered to it in a groupthink kind of way, that would somehow curtail the psychos that actually go and kill small children and whatnot in schools. I just don't see how they would stop what they're doing because people aren't mentioning their name. I think they're going to be crazy no matter what. That's just my opinion. Zion, thank you for the call. Folks, we come back to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, it's the speed round. Keep your comments to less than a minute. Let's go to Frank in Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Frank, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. I want to say that back in the first grade, I was blonde. The next year, in the second grade, I was full puberty. My hair was dark, hair all over my body. And then the third grade, Sister Mary Satan and the Monsignor said, I'm going to hell, and there's nothing I can do about it. You know, it's a true fact of life.
It was a foregone conclusion. This guy's a bad guy. Frank, I don't believe it. I think you're one of the good guys. You know, it's funny you say that, but I could totally see how people come to that conclusion. Not because of you, just because, you know, when you're dealing with kids in second, third, and fourth grade, they can be unruly and they can be crazy. Frank, excellent point and a good take on humor as well. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And hopefully neither one of us is menstruating, right? I can guarantee it. We're not. Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Sarah, go right ahead quickly.
Hey, great to talk to you. I don't know why guys want to have a period. That's crazy. And I got to say, them same men can have periods like same people can fly. Well, yeah, you can fly if you get into an airplane, if you do engineering, but you can't fly just with your own biological equipment. And at least in the case of an airplane, you're not damaging and hurting your body to do it. You're just making a mechanical ability. But what they're doing to men and giving periods, I don't know how they do it, but it sounds like Frankenstein medicine. Thank you very much.
Sarah, you're welcome. Well, I think what's happening there is really that it's not men that are getting their periods per se. It's women that are taking testosterone, growing facial hair, and women that are menstruating, women that identify as men, what they call a trans man. And they're the ones that are, you know, that's why the difference between cis men and trans men. So I think that's where that kind of comes from. And again, is why I think it's important that we always treat this stuff as like what it really is, which used to be called gender dysphoria. And it was treated as a mental illness instead of being celebrated as some sort of diversity. And I just wanted to take a moment to welcome a new station that's coming on board in January, but they put their press release out today. 9:20 a.m., The Patriot, KYST out of Houston, Texas. I want to welcome them to the America at Night with Rich Valdez family. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to speaking with you guys as well tomorrow. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, folks, I am Rich Valdez. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America.